But Willie, I mean, the president has said in the past, I and I alone, America first. But he's got to be learning as it relates to North Korea. He needs international partners here. Can he bring them in this week? The game has changed.
The game has changed, and I think what's at stake is very, very serious now, and he gets that. And I frankly think that...
The president gets that?
I think his advisors certainly get it, and I think he realizes this is a serious matter. And frankly, I see those tweets yesterday as a way of him giving his personal base some red meat to allow him to do some of what we've been doing in our bipartisan problem solvers caucus, his meetings with Pelosi and Schumer, to say, hey, I'm still your guy, I'm still with you, to give him a little space, and frankly to maybe give him some space this week on climate. I think he's trying to figure out how he can keep his base together to give himself some credit to get some wins, because he's not going to be able to get wins without votes, and for votes he needs Democrats, so he's got to juggle this, and I think he's learning. He disrupts all of us.
Okay,
what are we talking about this morning? We're talking about his tweets rather than North Korea. We're talking about his tweets. Change the subject from Pelosi and Schumer. That's giving him a little space.
I hear this argument that you're making, and it does make sense to me. How hard is it going to be for you as a Democrat, for the left, to hear you make that statement? Could they not say to you, you're rationalizing awful behavior here?
I think what I need to do is get good things done for the country and help keep us safe and strong. And right now that's at risk with North Korea. And frankly, I would hope in addition to being strong and tough, we clearly need to get China to the table and helping, and Russia to the table helping with North Korea. We can't do that by ourselves. We have no leverage now at this point. We don't. We're going to need China and Russia, but China in particular.
I want to go back to Paris because we heard a lot about it over the weekend, a lot of confusion. Some said this was sort of Tillerson going rogue, but also as it relates to Paris, it sounded like we'd even be out of it until 2018, but I want to share what H.R. McMaster said over the weekend.
What the president has is that we're withdrawing from the Paris Accord. He left the door open to re-entering at some later time, if there can be a better deal for the United States.
So it is possible the United States would stay in if you can get a new agreement?
If there's an agreement that benefits the American people, certainly.
What do you make of this?
This is utterly incoherent, just as pretty much
I'm so glad I'm not the only one confused.
I mean, this doesn't make a lick of sense, because let's keep in mind what the Paris Climate Accord is. It does not set numerical targets for the member nations. So the notion that we're going to renegotiate Paris, it doesn't make, it literally is nonsensical. Trump has the power to reduce the U.S. targets while remaining within the Paris framework. The only reason he chose to pull out of the Paris framework is basically to throw red meat at the bubbas out there, his core supporters, by feeding them this fantasy that he's protecting American sovereignty from these evil globalists, who are assaulting America. It's ridiculous. Paris addresses a vital international issue, global climate change, but it does not set numerical targets, so it doesn't make any sense that we're going to renegotiate. This is just this brainless mantra that Trump has been repeating about, I'm a great deal maker. There's no evidence of that, but he's breaking up perfectly good deals for no other reason than basically so he can say that he's protecting American sovereignty and going to make a better deal, which is not going to happen.
Congressman Reid, you're also on the Climate Caucus. Do you understand what's happening here?
Absolutely, and I'm glad to hear Max say that the Paris deal is a useless agreement because it doesn't have numerical targets with it.
I don't actually remember saying that.
Yeah, I think you did. I think you did.
No,
and I will tell you
hold
this,
on.
Stephanie.
Congressman Reid, I want you to make your point, but we're not going to put words in his mouth. He didn't say it was a useless agreement.
Essentially, he's saying that there's no deal there and there's no harm.
That's not what he said.
That's what I heard.
What I said is
what I also heard was extreme.
Hold on. Let's let him make his point.
It calls for voluntary emissions reductions without actually setting hard caps, but it does. The result of Paris would be a decline in global emissions, which I think is a positive thing, even though there's much more that could.
Everyone shares that commitment. I think the president shares that commitment. He wants to do this right. He wants to address climate change in a way
that
really?
put
Does Scott Pruitt support that? The president clearly believes that climate change exists because as we look.
I don't know, Stephanie, I don't know a member of Congress or anyone in Washington, D.C. that says we want to pollute our air and our water more. What we're all united on is reducing the negative impacts on our environment. That's common ground. That is where, when you talk about reducing pollution, it brings people together.
But when you roll back regulations that protect our environment, that doesn't help.
But you have to do it in a reasonable way. And you have to do it in a reasonable way and look at the people behind the impact of those regulations on small businesses and businesses across America. Those are hardworking taxpayers that are being put out of business, and the hard workers that are being put out of their operations because of these regulations, not taking a reasonable approach to it. I'm not just going to sit here and allow these attacks to go unaddressed by my good friend here, Max Boot.
Congresswoman?
I serve on the Science Committee, and I can tell you, with all due respect, Tom, I do disagree on this. There's pollution. There's also these long-term trends around climate, and we're seeing aggravated storms. Now, climate change didn't cause the storms, but there's widespread consensus that it's making them worse. That is costing real money right now. And I think, again, the president can renegotiate with himself, renegotiate those targets for the United States down, but keeping that deal together is good for America. Because, frankly, we've been a leader. We want other countries to get with the program. By pulling out, we're sending exactly the wrong message. We want them in. We want everybody rowing in the same direction. And that's why it's so important that, set new standards, but stay in. Stay in. And I think we're seeing the cost. We are seeing the cost right now of not doing it. And it's going to cost. We are going to be voting on supplemental bills. And rather than building new infrastructure, which you want to do and I want to do, we're going to be spending more money to put the islands where you spent last week back together, and they're about to get hit by another storm.
Indeed.
This is real cost right now and lives right now.
Where we need